Hello, everyone. We're going to be talking about Browning Chapter 6 today. Let me go ahead and launch it. Okay, there we go. Okay, we're going to be talking about foundation grants, particularly as we talked earlier in previous sessions that there is a hierarchy to the grant game. Federal grants, state grants, county grants. I think foundation grants usually are sort of near the bottom, which is good and bad. The good thing is that can always be your first grant, right? And usually, if you establish good relationships with foundations, they're usually likely to re-grant you once your grant ends, right? And so it's a good thing to write these grants, right? And so that's so, and they could also be large. It all depends, right? Doesn't mean that they're always small, but that they're always small, but generally they are. So okay, let's go ahead and talk about foundation grants. Okay, like any grant, foundations are very specific about the formatting. Okay, they vary by funder, and even though some foundations do utilize a very similar format, generally they're going to usually use their own format. So whatever the format is in terms of spacing or word character count or anything, this is really writing these grants is really an exercise in making sure you're able to follow directions about formatting, because they're very likely to kick your grant back if you don't meet certain formatting expectations. Okay, customization is critical. Okay, making sure that uh, don't think that you're going to recycle one grant to another foundation without reading their very specific rules for how they want that grant submitted. Okay, two typical formats for foundation grants. One is the RAG format, which is red, amber, green. Red means that it meets the full requirements in formatting. Amber is partially, and red does not meet. You really want actually. I'm sorry. The first one is green. Sorry. Let me change that. My mistake. Green. You want green. You want to meet the full requirements. You don't want to be falling into red or amber here. Okay. And then you have the NNG format, which is no new graphics, no tables, no graphics, no icons, no text boxes, nothing. Okay. All they want is plain text. Okay. Sometimes not even bullet points. Okay. And just follow the directions exactly as they say. This format isn't used very much, but you will run into it every once in a while. For every 10 grants, or maybe every 20 grants, I may run into it once maybe every 25 grants or so. And so, yeah, okay, maybe around 4 or 5%. Okay, some common application formats are used to resubmit across multiple grants, right? They have the same narrative questions, which is really the narrative questions is where you're doing a lot of the writing, okay? Because you're answering their questions, even though you sort of know what your program is, you're really answering their specific questions in terms of what they're asking. And those narrative questions could sometimes differ across grants. This is usually where the writing, where the creativity, where you get to tell your story. This is it. It's the narrative. Okay. This is typical for requirements for a grant is they want the organizational overview, and I'll provide some descriptions of these things: program description, budget, and a budget narrative, leadership and governance, who's going to be running the program, who's going to oversee it, financial statements, which are 990s, and then equity and community impact. Okay. Okay, so there's no real specific format a lot of times for many foundations. You just got to make sure that you follow their format. Okay, in the common grant application for foundations, usually the cover page is usually one page. You got to be careful. The key thing to be careful here is whether they want wet signature or a digital signature. A lot of times they want a wet signature. And what does that mean? Wet signature means that if whoever's signing off on this grant, right, they're going to have to sign it, and then you're going to have to scan that page and scan all of your pages to submit your grant. Okay. It's not anything that they could do some sort of digital signature. A wet signature is that they actually have to sign. Okay, and that could be that's about half of the time. They're kind of moving away from it, but you still see a lot of it. Okay. And then you have a 5-page narrative maximum, which is typical. Again, sometimes more, sometimes less, but 5 pages is pretty typical. And what that really means is you don't really have a lot of time to write. It seems 5 pages may seem like a lot, but really, in the grand scheme of things and all the things that you're being asked to write about, that really is not very much, to be honest with you. Okay. All right. So narrative sections, organizational background. This is the kind of things they're looking for. How long has the organization been around? Right. This is very standard. Okay. Who do you serve? Right. How do you serve them? And what are the outcomes of that service? Okay. How do you know you're doing a good job, essentially? And then you have community demographics, which are, demographics of the area, not just the school or the district, but it may be the city or the town or the county. What type of demographics do you have? And not just what you know, but something that you could cite. Any type of indicators that are going to show impact and the impact that you have on that community would be great. And any data sources that you have, particularly like the US Census or kids data, are very good, comprehensive, broad view of what's going on. And then you'll have your program description and the need. What is the need? Why should they give you the money? Why do you need the money? Okay. Okay, the problem statement. This is an example of a problem statement. It's clear, you clearly define your need. And so here, this example that I put together: students in Sanger Unified School District continue to experience persistent academic achievement gaps, particularly in early literacy, according to state assessment data. And right there, I put it in bold because you're going to have to cite the data. Okay. Cite where you're getting it from. Only 41% of third grade students in the district meet grade level reading standards met in 2024, compared to 58 statewide. Okay, that shows that there's a need, right? Outcomes are significantly lower for students from low income households, which are 34% of the households, and English learners, which are 29% of the households. You see, they took a lot of shortcuts in the writing, and purposely, right? Because you probably only have a very specific character or word limit. Okay. Clearly shows need in a very brief type of way. Okay. The use of data and demographics. Here's another example. In Copper Hills Elementary School, that's my daughter's school, student achievement data indicates significant gaps in early literacy outcomes, according to the state reading assessment results, which you'll cite. Only 44% of third graders met grade level reading standards in 2024. Performance varies substantially by student subgroup. 32% of English learners, 35% of students eligible for free and reduced lunch met proficiency benchmarks, compared to 61 of their non-low income peers. Demographic data show that 68% of Copper Hills Elementary students come from low-income households, 41% are English learners, and 12% receive special education services. Additionally, 29% of students speak a language other than English at home. Here, you're not just citing the data, you're telling the data in a narrative fashion. You're interweaving a story, you're interweaving the data into a story. And that's ultimately what you want, okay? You don't really just plop down data. You tell a story and you integrate the story into your school or your district. Okay. And then you also align with the foundation's mission, right? And find out who it is that they want to serve and that type of thing. That's really what you'll focus on if you're also serving that population. Okay, so this is just an overview of the goals and objectives for that we're going to be talking about. SMART objectives. You have a really targeted type of result, and you answer what change will occur. Okay, what change will occur after you get the money and you implement the program? You tell that in the SMART objectives. You have measurable outcomes, which is evidence of change. How will we know? What we're talking about here is evaluation at a basic level. Not, you don't have to be, a prolific researcher, but you should be able to pull or use a survey or one that's already constructed or create a short survey that is a pre and post and be able to measure some outcomes. Okay, then you have time-bound activities, which there's answers the question, what will we do and when? Okay. Okay, here's an example of a SMART objective. And you generally want to put, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 at the very minimum, right? Objective 1, by June 2027, 75% of third grade students participating in the early literacy support program at Wawona Elementary School will demonstrate at least 1 year of reading growth as measured by the state-approved reading assessment, compared to a baseline proficiency rate of 44% in 2024. Why is this a SMART goal? Here it is. It's specific. Talking about third graders, it's measurable. 1 year of growth. It's achievable. It's really to improve, not really to achieve perfection. It's relevant, directly tied to literacy, and it's time bound, right? And it's going to be achieved by June 2027. Okay. Measurable outcomes. Here's an example of outcome 1. Okay. So, at the end of each academic year, participating students will demonstrate improved reading proficiency with an average increase of 15 percentage points on standardized literacy assessments. That's what we really want with measurable outcomes. You want to be able to quantify. Again, you don't promise the world, but you also want to show that the program really does work and it's going to have a significant impact, right? 15 percentile points is, I think, pretty significant, within 1 year of application of the program. Okay. Then you have time-bound activities. Okay. Here's one example. Activity 1 from September 2026 through May 2027. Students will participate in small group literacy instruction for 45 minutes, 3 times per week, delivered by trained reading specialists. It tells you when it starts, the activity is going to start, when it's going to end, who's going to do it, and for how long are they going to do it. Okay. Then we have evaluation and sustainability. Okay, this is the data piece. This is usually the part that people don't like, and a lot of times hire external evaluators to do this. But depending on what they're asking for, I say do not shy away from this in terms of being able to let them know what you want to do and also deploying it and actually doing the evaluation yourself. So the first thing is demonstrating impact. The effectiveness of the early literacy support program will be evaluated using a mixed methods approach to assess student outcomes and program implementation. And you've probably learned what mixed methods and a mixed methods approach is in your ERE 220 course, right? Quantitative data will be collected through state-approved literacy assessments administered at baseline, mid-year, and program completion. So you got 3 points of data there that you're putting in there. Student growth will be analyzed by comparing pre- and post-assessment scores and disaggregated by grade level, English learner status, and socioeconomic status. Qualitative data will be gathered through teacher surveys and classroom observations to assess instructional fidelity and program engagement. Participant engagement. Okay, this is the sustainability. They want to know, hey, when the money runs out, does the program get eliminated? You never want to say yes. You always want to say that you have a plan. I mean, you should have a plan, but If you don't have a plan, you should at least say you're going to have a plan or that you do have a plan. Okay. So you say, here's an example: to ensure program sustainability beyond the grant period, that means after the grant ends, Fresno High School will integrate successful program components into the existing instructional structures. Following the grant year, trained classroom teachers will continue implementing evidence-based literacy strategies as part of core instruction, reducing reliance on external funding. The organization will also pursue diversified funding, including district support, local education foundation grants, and Title I resources. The thing that you want to avoid here for continuation is don't only say, we're going to seek more grant funding to be able to keep this going, right? That should be part of your strategy. That should not be your only strategy. Reviewers don't really like reading things like that, okay? All right. And showing organizational capacity, which means, do you have the right people, the good number of people to be able to implement the program? So here's an example. Sunnyside High School has the administrative and instructional capacity to successfully implement and manage the proposed program. The project will be led by a literacy program coordinator with, fill it in, 15, 20 years of experience in curriculum development and teacher coaching. Implementation will be supported by credentialed reading specialists and classroom teachers trained in evidence-based literacy instruction. The organization has established systems for data collection, fiscal oversight, and compliance, including experience managing state and foundation-funded education programs. Okay, and then they're also going to want attachments always and a budget, okay? And I think in previous sessions, we went through some of the budgets, but I think you would look up what a 990 form is. And generally, if you have a 501c3, generally, you're submitting a 990 form every year. And then before you even begin the grant, you should have the board and all the staff that's going to be part of it, part of any grant effort. Even if you think they're maybe on the periphery of grant efforts, you want to have short descriptions of what they do, a paragraph, maybe 5 to 10 sentences. And you want to have resumes and or CVs ready to go. You don't want to be collecting that last minute. So that's something you should have up front, have it ready to go if and when you need it, okay? And then a detailed budget that, explains how all the money's going to be spent, if you have any matching funds to go with it. And then also to explain the budget. It's called the budget narrative. That usually goes with the budget, and they have different formats of how they want it. Sometimes they want it built right underneath the budget, right? And other times they want it as a completely separate document. The key thing is for you to figure out how they want that, okay? But they usually, almost 98% of the time, they want a budget narrative to go with your budget. Only a couple of times I haven't done that in my life. Okay, so following formatting rules is key, as we talked about, customizing every submission. But, once you answer those initial narrative questions for one grant, some of them may be able to carry over for other grants. Don't think they won't, but they may have to be customized because the word character limit may be a little different, and other things may be different in terms of how they may not want tables, and you have a table in there, those little type of nuances. And then double check compliance, make sure that the whole team reads everything makes sense, that they read the RFP, that you followed all the guidelines, and that you're ready to go. Okay, that's going to be the end of this chapter. Thank you very much.